Good evening and welcome to Mountain Bears. Oh, hey, you're in my seat.
I know. I was getting ready to say, get out of my chair.
Get out of my chair. Goodness. All right. Wow. This has been a week. This has been a week. Oh, this has been a week.
Yes. Hey, Brenda.
Hello, Brenda, darling. How are you? The reason we're late is I'm working on music, but I've been working on music for a little bit, and the patrons will get that in their Discord when I'm ready to release the set.
We're not late. We're like 3 minutes early.
What the fuck?
Okay. I know. I was like, what is your rush? And you're like, let's go. And it's okay. All right. Well, good deal.
I've been riding for Bear since yesterday.
Yes. All right. Go for it. Start telling us about Natalie Cochran.
All right. So this case is A, local, B, national attention for not something stupid. Well, kinda. And C is like 8 years old. Like, this case is older than our relationship.
Yes. Yeah, this should have been some of my first red flags about moving to our town. Yeah. Like, this is the kind of things that go on here.
Well, no, not often. I mean, we've had a few interesting cases, but this one is forever.
Well, yeah, this one's taken forever to reach its conclusion because there were so many things going on to start with.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, this is not the first criminal trial
that
has occurred. This is what, the second, the third?
This is the first state trial. This is the second trial, because the first one had to be in felony court. So around 2016, 2017, there's this couple, and they are making big ass news stories. Scholarships. They are leading the local little league and being
the town darlings,
the town socialites, but doing so much good.
Oh yeah, doing so much good. Yeah, you know the foreshadowing here, guys. Mm-hmm. It all sounded great, but then.
Mm-hmm.
So continue.
Okay. And then suddenly the husband dies. I don't know where. Jim dude suddenly dies after 6 days in the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And then about a month or two later, it comes out that big investment, those big plans, that everything they had been doing was a Ponzi scheme.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, like, there was another incident before all of that happened. Or at about the same time. Because, so, like, all right, so this is one of the, like, I forget what he did. She was a pharmacist.
Mm-hmm.
And then, he was running the gun shop?
Yeah, he was running a little small gun shop and, pillar of the fucking community here.
This is West Virginia, guys. In case you're not familiar, like, running a gun shop, which would not necessarily sound like a pillar of the community job.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a big deal here. Like, it's West Virginia. These people love their guns.
Yes, we do.
Like, it's kind of guns, God, glory in that order. Like, guns are first, though.
Right. So, and he's coaching Little League and giving speeches and all this stuff. She is doing diabetic consulting, being Access Health pharmacist. Pillars of the damn community.
Oh, yeah. Doing all the things.
He just up and dies. No one knows why.
Yeah.
And then the Ponzi scheme comes out. And then 9-10 months after he's dead, they finally do an autopsy.
Mm-hmm. Well, or at least get all the results together and figure out what happened.
No.
Literally waited like 10 months or 9 months to do an autopsy.
They done an autopsy 9 months after the man went into the mausoleum.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Still nothing. Family devastated. Her, royal bitch. Everything crazy.
Oh, and by the way, in the middle of a massive Ponzi scheme investigation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
4 years later, they try to do another autopsy. And they find enough evidence, not all the evidence they wanted, but enough evidence to take this to trial. She reaches a plea deal in the Ponzi scheme, which is so bullshit, for 11 years and 3 months.
Mm-hmm. But hey, she's locked up. She can't do anything.
Right.
Yeah, not a bit suspicious in the middle of that your husband dies and like the next day you get raided on a Ponzi scheme. Or, very close together.
Very closely.
Yeah. Not
so finally the trial is over. I learned a very valuable piece of information that wasn't stored in my brain, but I've seen the shenanigans before. But I think that it was one trial and one decision. They broke this into 2.
Mm-hmm.
The first was the murder trial. She gets guilty. Mm-hmm. The second is the punishment phase. And West Virginia's punishment phase is simple: life with mercy, life without mercy. Mm-hmm. But apparently our legislators took it out of the judge's hands and put it into the jury's hands, which is very common in West Virginia. But no one took time to figure out the process. Oh, no. So you got to see the full her family versus his family, her friends versus his friends on show yesterday. Took an hour and 15 minutes to decide no mercy. Took less than 2 hours. Now, granted, they had to eat a Tudor sausage biscuit in this. Less than 2 hours to find her guilty.
Yeah. I mean, you got to figure out which Tudor's biscuits you want. That takes time.
Well, no, the judge bought them all sausage biscuits from Tudor's. I'm quite sure it's from Tudor's because this is Beckley.
Oh, fair enough. Like if it wasn't Tudor's, I mean, I hope someone demands compensation.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, let's go. People, their reporting on this is really better than my storytelling.
Mm-hmm. All right. So this is from Metro News. Raleigh County prosecutors react to verdict following trial of Natalie Cochran. So Raleigh County prosecutors say at the end of the day. Oh, People? Sorry, did I miss
People has the better article.
I don't think I got that link. Sorry. I got the Metro News article. There you go. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. So, pharmacist killed husband with insulin injection so he wouldn't learn about $2 million Ponzi scheme. After Natalie Cochran poisoned her husband, she told friends she would let him sleep it off instead of taking him to the hospital, prosecutors said. Former West Virginia pharmacist was convicted of killing her husband of 19 years by injecting him with insulin, all to keep him from finding out about a $2 million Ponzi scheme she was running. On Wednesday, January 29th, a jury in Raleigh County found Natalie Cochran guilty of first-degree murder in the 2019 death of her husband, Michael Cochran, 38, CBS News reports. Cochran burst into tears when she heard the guilty verdict, which the jury reached in 2 hours. West Virginia Metro News reports she is currently serving an 11-year prison sentence after pleading guilty in 2020 to federal wire fraud and money laundering, according to a release from the U.S. Attorney's Office of the Southern District of West Virginia. From 2017 to 2019, prosecutors said she ran a $2 million Ponzi scheme, posing as a government contractor and defrauding investors out of millions of dollars, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Instead of investing money investors gave her, prosecutors said she used the money to buy real estate, jewelry, and a 1965 Shelby Cobra, the U.S. attorney said. She was also ordered to pay nearly $2.6 million in restitution. During her murder trial, prosecutors said Cochran killed her husband when he became suspicious about a government contract business they owned, Court TV reported. Prosecutor Ashley Accord argued that Michael Cochran was growing increasingly worried about money he was expecting from the business, which Natalie Cochran was going to be unable to produce, Court TV reported. Natalie Cochran had to either come clean or take him out, Accord argued, according to Court TV. On the day Michael Cochran died, she told friends he wasn't feeling well. When friends urged her to take him to the hospital, Natalie Cochran said she would let him sleep it off. He died 5 days later. Her conviction carries a maximum penalty of life in prison. On January 30th, the jury will decide whether Cochran will be eligible for parole after serving 15 years. So that's the People rundown.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad she didn't even get life without parole.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, she got life without parole. I'm glad for it.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, like the layers of this one is because you almost have to start by proving, which is what they did. You really have to prove the Ponzi scheme before you can consider the murder.
Right.
Because without the Ponzi scheme, like you're going to have a little difficulty there trying to prove the murder. Like, what was the motive?
Right.
You know, like, otherwise you're just... Because that's what we kind of saw with the... what was that case? Where he killed his husband and son. Murdoch case. Was that the murder trial ultimately became trying to convince everyone that he had a motive, which was the financial issue. So basically, instead of trying to prove the murder, you had to prove the crime that would precipitate the murder.
Right. Yeah, and that was easy to prove.
Well, in which one? In Murdaugh or in this one or both?
The Ponzi scheme was easy to prove.
Yeah. Oh, like, yeah. No.
The harder thing to prove here was if the husband knew.
Yeah, that would be the harder part to try to find evidence on, because I assume that if you think, after 19 years of marriage, and I assume trusted your spouse to get to this point, you're probably not sending a lot of text messages or taking a lot of video when you're like, honey, where's the money?
Right. Well, you're sending a lot of text messages, and this was like the closer for the case for me. Okay. Natalie Cochran was supposed to take the stand. All the way through the trial, we were told, the defendant will take the stand. Defense never called her.
No. Sometimes that's probably going to, like, the reality is it depends upon what evidence is getting presented and what questions you wouldn't want someone being asked.
Right.
Because once you take a stand,
right,
you're going to get asked some pointed questions.
So she didn't take the stand. So a rebuttal witness was called, the investigator. And this defense attorney apparently did not read his fucking reports and transcripts. and the length of messages.
Oh, so see, now this is where I would think that was it a lot of her trying to defer the conversation, put it off? Oh, the money will be there. It's just delayed. It's just delayed. It's just delayed.
Mm-hmm. And he is going, where's the money? When's the money hitting? Where's the money hitting? Because this was all over government contract. They were supposedly selling weapons to the government.
Mm-hmm.
First there's an audit, then there's a government shutdown, and she is, and the defense attorney asks, in these text messages, anywhere does Michael ask anything about the money?
Oh no.
And he looks at the attorney and goes, do you want me to go through and read every one of them? And the attorney, yes, show us where. He starts reading
page by page by
page. Conversations about taking a plane to, and I didn't get this. Can you explain this? All right, we both know where Lynchburg, Virginia is from here. Is
roughly
there any reason to take a private plane from here to Lynchburg, Virginia?
I mean, ordinarily, no.
I mean, it's 2 hours by car.
Yeah. I mean, I would think the only reason that I mean, granted, we currently have a former governor turned congressperson that is now taking a private plane daily from Greenbrier to DC, for expediency of travel.
Right.
But I would say for most ordinary people,
right,
you would probably only be doing that to pick up cargo.
Yeah.
Like, what else? What else would you expect with that?
Right. So the day that he dies, they're supposed to take a private plane from Beckley, West Virginia to Lynchburg, Virginia to sit down with a private banker who never heard of Natalie Cochran and go, where the hell's our $1.4 billion and why isn't it in our account?
Why wouldn't you just drive?
Yeah.
I mean, like, I appreciate maybe this is your lifestyle and it's like, I'll take a private plane for the expediency of travel. I could understand that. I could follow that. It's not a lifestyle I lead.
Right.
If I need to be in Lynchburg, Virginia to talk to a banker, I'm grabbing my car keys and we're going to have a very long drive.
But suddenly, every time they're supposed to take this trip, he gets sick. First, he has a seizure, he goes in the hospital, blah, blah, blah. Then they're getting ready for the thing, and he falls out on the floor, and she takes a picture of him in the kitchen. Then she has him put on the couch. And she leaves him there for 6 hours.
Okay, so yeah, it's kind of hard to argue that she doesn't know what's happening. She just doesn't want to, like, be right there for it. But so, like, how many times were they supposed to meet with this banker? Twice. I figure by that second time, as I'm starting to feel ill, I would hope or would expect that I would be laying on that couch going, something's wrong.
Right.
Like, this is very specific.
But he's got a blood sugar of 21 when he gets to the ER at Raleigh General. Non-diabetic, 21. Some diabetics body's used to 21 where you just rock on through.
Yeah, well, trying to rock on through a 21 is hard. Most people hit the ground hard.
Right.
Diabetic or non-diabetic, you're going to hit the ground hard once you get below the 30s.
Right.
Like, this is how it is.
Right. you're not in the best energy, but there are diabetics that can bounce in those low numbers. Non-diabetics, not even close.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Well, and especially for a non-diabetic, it like, do you understand how hard it is to maintain a 21?
Right.
Like for diabetics, it's so to speak a little easier. Part of diabetes is the inability to self-regulate blood sugar. For someone who is not diabetic, like, your body should be doing all the things to try to bring you back out of that.
Right.
Like, you should be at least trying to crawl to the refrigerator at a 21, at a 30, at a 40, for something.
Right. But you don't leave someone on the couch who you don't know why is passed out and tell them, oh, they'll just sleep it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I would argue
shows up and forces his wife to come over, and the wife's a medical physician's assistant, doctor secretary, and it's like, no, he's going to the hospital, and you can blame me.
Why would this even be an argument? Like, you know what I mean?
It was I would think that's apparently discussion there.
Like, I'm trying to imagine this, because if you're the darlings of the town, and I assume you live in a nice little neighborhood and you have concerned friends that live nearish by,
right?
I would be standing there going, what the hell is, like, if I'm the friend and he is this out of it, why are you even arguing about the emergency room? Like, did he do illegal drugs? Like, do I see, like, as in because it, like, in the 20s and 30s, he's going to have trouble communicating, staying awake, and generally being, like, really aloof. Like, he's not going to be very coherent.
Right.
If I'm seeing someone in that condition, and I already know, like, diabetes hasn't pinged the brain, or low blood sugar hasn't pinged the brain, I'm going to be like, what drugs did he take?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, why don't you want him to go to the hospital? You need to tell me what he took.
Right.
And then he's still going to the hospital because we don't give a fuck anymore.
Right.
The important point is keep him the fuck alive. Because it's going to look, and this is one of the common issues that diabetics can face, is ketoacidosis looks a lot like severe substance abuse. It's really hard to tell the difference.
Right.
Is you are effectively disoriented to the point that you're going to look like you're either severely drunk,
right,
or you've taken a downer to hell and back.
Right. Right.
So I'm like, my first question probably would be, what drug did he take, and how fast can we get an ambulance here? Because this is going downhill quick.
Right.
Like, what, and why would you be arguing about it? Like I would be looking at the spouse, going, "Are you trying to kill him?"
Right.
Like, is this a suicide thing?
Right.
You know, sorry, trigger warnings everywhere, but what is this? Like, you're gonna have to explain this to me. I'm dialing 911 while you do it.
Right. But no, they load him into the car. She has to take her laptop and cell phone, and takes her time to get to the car. He's in the emergency room. He's in ICU. And she's just on her phone and on her laptop dealing with business. Won't let the family see him. None of that. 3 days ICU, and she moves him to hospice where the family gets to see him finally. And he's unresponsive. But it was charted that he was responsive in the hospital.
Okay. See, I'm really struggling with, like, I know it's a real struggle, like, to deal with people who are diabetic, and that it can be very deadly to be at a sustained low blood sugar. It can sometimes be worse than having a sustained high blood sugar.
Right.
But as a non-diabetic, were they just like poking around in the dark trying to figure out what the hell was wrong with him?
Right.
And just no one thought to run a glucose?
Well, they ran a glucose. It was 21, the instantly administered glucose.
Okay.
They didn't do a detection.
I'm not sure I followed that.
You can test whether the body is producing the insulin.
Okay.
Or if it's been administered, they didn't do that. They instead corrected the blood sugar. And he did not recover from that insulin injection.
Okay, so he was already too close. She knew he was too close to the end.
Right.
That ultimately, because it's a...
Right.
Generally gonna be a pretty slow death.
Right.
Like, I know TV has made it look like this is going to be a quick, instantaneous, like, you swallow poison kind of, and you're dead.
Right.
No, your body's going to fight this to the best of its ability.
Right.
And typically, if you so that means, like, so how long was he passed out before the neighbors knew, and took action?
At least 6 hours.
Oh yeah. So at that point,
yeah,
his body was already
shutting down. Yeah.
Which would probably argue that, because the thing is, and I assume what happened here was she was trying to give a dose that would be mostly undetectable. Like, in case they ran an autopsy to explain why someone in their 30s, 40s, 30s is dead, because you're going to run an autopsy for that and try to figure out what.
Right.
How does someone that was ambulatory this morning / yesterday and fully active, completely together, drop dead?
Right.
Like, that makes no sense to anyone. But okay, cool. So it sounds like this is one of those, like, it became a suffering death.
Right.
Hence probably the reason they went no mercy on it, is because she was trying to do a less detectable dosing, so that if someone ran an autopsy and they figured out that he had taken insulin, that it would be one of those, it would convert in the postmortem faster, hopefully, than, like, you know what I mean? It would be wiggle room for doubt. Like, we can't really prove it. So she was riding that line between a sudden fatal dose and just enough to F you up. So she's in that in-between window.
Right. Well, because there was no toxicology pulled before they went into action, because there was no time to... An emergency room is going to fix the emergency. It's not going to go, ooh, we need to check this, and this.
Yeah, no, like, you don't go to an emergency room for evidence collection except in one incident. And if you're unclear on what incident that is, it's called rape and sexual assault. That's the only time you go to an emergency room where evidence is your priority.
Right. I'm just surprised they didn't pull tox, but I guess tox doesn't show insulin. And after 6 hours, any barbiturates she injected him with wouldn't show, even though he was allergic to barbiturates, which would only complicate this matter, because shelf life of barbiturates is 3 hours. She waited 6, so it's not going to show.
Yeah, the half-life. Well, but even so, okay, the assumptive is then that she drugged him first to basically, put him on the couch. Then she turned around.
Floor.
Okay, on the kitchen floor. And then once he's down, is trying to non-suspiciously inject him with insulin.
Mm-hmm.
So then, as the barbiturates are wearing off, then his body is now trying to deal with the insulin issue,
mm-hmm.
which is slowly killing him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's going to get you some no mercy right there. Like that, the level of premeditation with that.
Right. But, they barely touched on how this could have been done, the suspicions behind this. She asked the neighbors for insulin because she was their backup person for their child. Like 2 days before she got barbiturates and cold medicine because she had the flu, which is why they were going to not go today on the airplane ride. And then this happens, and he's basically, she has the contractors working on her house take him from the kitchen floor around 3:30. After 12:30, when she snapped a picture and sent it to everybody that he was passed out on the floor, to put him on the couch. And I think if his friends had not shown up.
Yeah, because if you see that photo, like I'm sorry, I guess I'm supposed to be glad I don't have the mind of a killer, because what are you trying to do other than like establish that what? He's that sick, he's that serious before he dies, and that we just, what, like, I don't get it. Like, what?
No one ever connected those dots.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. It is, again, it's trying to get inside the mind of someone who commits a murder, and like be grateful it doesn't make any sense, because if it made sense, you're probably capable of killing someone in the same way, for the same reasons, in the same, like, you're in the mindset. Right. Because I'm sitting here going, that would seem counterintuitive. Like, why would you want to share that? Because as a friend, you post that online, I'm instantly concerned. What the hell do you mean?
Right.
Like, why are you snapping a photo instead of getting him off the floor and calling 911?
Right.
Leave him on the floor, call 911.
Yeah. What was even more cold and calculating to me was he's laying there in the hospital bed. In the hospice bed. The parents finally get to see him. And what's she doing? Is she happy that they're there? Maybe happy that he's getting a little comfort? Maybe she's grabbing a shower, grabbing a bite to eat. No, she's sitting there sending screenshots of fake contracts to the mother.
So she's trying to backpedal on the Ponzi scheme while he's dying.
No, she's trying to up it.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah, wanting the mother to invest more into the Ponzi scheme.
His mother.
Yes.
Like, and again, that's one of those follow the bouncy ball of,
right.
You really think his mother cares right now?
Right.
Like, why would you think that would be a priority for her? Like, I think I would have some choice words. As like, if I were an in-law in that moment of this, that would vaguely get to the point of, this is neither the time nor the place. Like, I don't care. That's the priority. The priority's in the hospital bed. The priority is struggling for his life. F the contracts. F the money. F the numbers. I don't care.
Right.
Like, I'm not writing a check right now unless it's to the hospital to fix him.
Right.
Like, if that's the problem, we'll write a check and fix it.
But what I found was even more delusional was watching her mother on the stand yesterday. Oh, she never stole from me. She never sweetened me. We're not victims. But yet she got part of the victim compensation fund.
And again, that kind of speaks to what I was just talking about. Because again, that's a mother who's sitting here going, it doesn't really matter what you did to me. I'm trying to save your life. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about the money. I don't care about the what you did, the lies you told, the whatever. To me, I don't want to watch you die. I don't want to watch you spend the rest of your life in prison. I don't want to watch you face the consequences of your actions. Whatever you did or didn't do.
Right.
Which again would be the mindset I would think that the mother of her husband would be having at the hospital, which is, I don't give a F about the money. I don't care about the contracts. I don't even care if you're stealing from me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, F it. I don't care. I don't have time to think about that.
Right.
This is the priority. The priority is dying in a hospital bed. The only thing I want to hear about money is if I need to write a check to save his life.
Right.
Do I need to write a check to save his life? No. Money's not going to fix that? Okay, then shut up. You know what I mean? Like, I would think that would be where my mind would go. Is that, like, this is irrelevant. Much like her mother would be doing in court. Is, I don't care. I don't care about the money. I don't care what she took from me. I don't care about what lies she told. I don't care what criminal act she was involved in. Save her life.
Right.
And that's what she did, or tried to do on a stand. Well, I wasn't a victim. Like, she didn't steal from me. Like, you know, we gave her the money. But then again, I'm sure that when it comes to getting some money back, oh yeah, you're gonna hi.
Yeah, the husband, the father of Natalie Cochran, didn't talk on the stand, did file the forms, and the wife's like, "Oh, I don't know what my husband did." Anyway, it was insane. Like, we've got to fix this mercy thing. Anyhow. All right, so we got some more news stories coming in.
Okay, I do want to read Brenda's comment real quick. So back to when I was saying, like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Brenda says, "No, Joe, if it makes sense, you're one of the women that falls asleep to true crime and serial killer TV shows." LOL.
Point well taken.
Point well taken. Point well taken. All right, so what's up next?
Up next, we have not just Reagan. Many airports across the U.S. were struggling with air traffic control staffing in recent years, data shows.
Yeah, so when an American Airlines flight fatally collided, this is from CNN US, when an American Airlines flight fatally collided with a military helicopter near Reagan National Airport Wednesday night, the airport's tower wasn't fully staffed, with one traffic controller handling the jobs of two people. But the situation was hardly an anomaly. Airports around the country have struggled with controller staffing levels for years, according to a CNN review of government data and interviews with aviation experts. The most recent data from the Federal Aviation Administration shows that across all airport towers and terminal approach facilities nationwide, only about 70% of staffing targets were filled by fully certified controllers as of September 2023. When controllers in training are included, that rose to about 79%. Some traffic control towers at major airports around the country, including Philadelphia, Orlando, Austin, Albuquerque, and Milwaukee, had less than 60% of their staffing targets filled with certified controllers. Reagan Airport had about 63%. Aviation experts say it's too early to tell whether a lack of sufficient staffing could have played a role in the disaster over the Potomac River that took 67 lives this week, but the tragedy could raise awareness of the staffing issues that go beyond a single airport. So air traffic controllers in the U.S. have been warning about the impact of low staffing levels for years, submitting anonymous reports to NASA's Aviation Safety Reporting System. At least 10 reports submitted by controllers included concerns about staffing, work schedules, or fatigue in the last year alone, the NASA database shows. Quote, "We have been short-staffed for too many years, and it's creating so many unsafe situations," one controller in Southern California wrote last year, recounting how a small aircraft requesting assistance could not be helped due to workload issues. The FAA has created an unsafe environment to work and for the flying public. The controller's mental health is deteriorating. Quote, "We are already on 4 6-day work weeks, working overtime every week," another controller in Northern California wrote. "This leads to controller fatigue very quickly. We need more staffing." Self-reported safety incidents by aviation personnel recorded in NASA's database detail hundreds of incidents since 2015 in which pilots said they were forced to take evasive action after to avoid collision with another aircraft or helicopter when trying to land or depart from the country's busiest airports. There were more reports of such incidents at Reagan National, which processes over 25 million passengers per year, than at any of the top 10 busiest airports in the country. Pilots and controllers coming through DCA reported at least 50 incidents of aircrafts being forced to move out of the way of other planes or helicopters in the past 10 years. Las Vegas, where nearly 60 million travelers pass through the airport every year, counted more than 40 reports of evasive action in the ASRS database over the last decade. In Miami, which sees double DCA's passengers per year, but only filled 60% of its target control tower staffing with fully certified controllers in September 2023, pilots and controllers reported about 36 incidents in which they said aircrafts needed to take action to avoid collision in the past 10 years. Reagan National stood out as well in the number of reports describing near collisions between aircrafts and helicopters. Pilots flying through DCA reported at least 23 such incidents since the data was collected in 1988. Most of the busiest airports in the U.S. had less than 5 reports detailing near misses between planes and helicopters in that time frame. In 2023, after a series of close calls at airports around the country, the FAA commissioned a safety review of the national airspace system. An independent team produced a report that found inadequate air traffic control staffing combined with outdated equipment and technology was rendering the current level of safety unsustainable. The report added that overtime among air traffic controllers had reached historically high levels and contributed to absences and fatigue. With, quote, "fewer eyes on the airspace, the opportunity for mistakes in instruction is multiplied," the report stated, noting there were about 1,000 fewer fully certified air traffic controllers in August 2023 than in August 2012, despite more complexity in the national airspace. The National Air Traffic Controllers Association, a union, has been warning about staffing shortages for more than a decade. So it goes on to say, there could be other factors. It's too early to speculate on the root cause, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
What I don't understand is why is there a helicopter in airspace? Like, airports should be no fly.
The problem is, like, understanding, I think, the amount of airspace needed for, like, approach and takeoff from an airport.
Right.
Like, it's a large swath.
Right.
I like, and it's really hard to understand that you don't, like, one, I understand, like, helicopters do have more minute function.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can take a helicopter off straight up.
Mm-hmm.
They can move pretty effectively. But even with that, you need such a large airspace
right
for an airplane, especially when we're talking about, like, I'm sure DCA is taking in like 777s.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, that's a lot of airspace to control.
Right.
Like, a 777 doesn't turn on a dime.
Right.
It's a very gentle flight path.
Right.
You don't just like push it off the ground and like bank it at like 90 degrees. It doesn't move that way.
Right.
It would probably actually rip the plane in half if you tried it.
Yeah.
So a lot of the maneuvers of typical aircraft would be over a sustained distance.
Right.
If you're trying to keep helicopters that can move more effectively out of that airspace and just go, well, this is an approach or takeoff from an airport, you can't fly here.
Right.
You're going to be blocking off a large amount of space that, you can't take a helicopter there. Like, we would be talking about miles of airspace that are a no-fly zone. It wouldn't really necessarily be useful. They said training missions up and down the river because of it being secured airspace close to the capital.
Tell them to go train in the desert. All right.
Yeah.
Everyone's seen the price of eggs. I think the last time I looked at them, they were about 75 cents an egg. Well, now there's more. West Virginia Department of Agriculture suspends poultry expeditions and sales events.
Welcome to bird flu season.
As an ongoing threat of highly, I don't know, you're going to have to read this. It's got too many damn words in it.
Okay. I'm not seeing the link for that one. Sorry. I'd love to. I didn't get a link. There we go. Oh, back to Metro News. So as the ongoing threat of highly pathogenic avian influenza, or the bird flu, rises, the West Virginia Department of Agriculture has suspended all poultry exhibitions and sales events. West Virginia has been watching the ongoing threat since 2022 and has been working with poultry industry stakeholders and interagency partners to prepare for if and when there was an outbreak in the state. As of right now, the suspension, which affects exhibition shows, swaps, meets, and the sale of poultry at flea markets or auction markets, is in effect until early April. When April comes around, they will review the situation based off the weather, temperature, and the movement of birds. West Virginia Agriculture Commissioner Kent Leonhard says that they know that the outbreak is linked mostly to waterfowl, and March is the biggest migration north for those birds. There have been confirmed cases in commercial poultry operations in surrounding states and in a backyard flock in Pocahontas County, and Leonhard said that this is what led to the suspension. Quote, well, it's a continuation of the growths, and it's also that it's earlier this year than we normally see, and we're also seeing it in our surrounding states, he said. While they've been keeping an eye on the outbreak for 3 years, he says they will continue those efforts to monitor the situation. Quote, we're just going to keep evaluating things as we go along, and our primary goal is to protect the poultry industry, whether it be private, commercial, or backyard flocks, Leonhard said. While the virus has been detected locally, federal and state wildlife agencies have confirmed that they have detected some cases in wild bird populations because of their continuous surveillance efforts. For poultry, Leonhard says that when the virus does infect a bird, it will most likely kill the animal. And when they finally detect that it was, in fact, the bird flu, they have to make sure that the virus doesn't spread to the rest of the flock. And so what we do is depopulate the flock to prevent it from spreading outside that flock to other birds, Leonhard said. While the virus is mainly transmitted from birds to birds, it can transmit to people through the bird's saliva, nasal secretions, or their feces. The Department of Agriculture has put out a list on how to prevent the spread of disease, which includes limit, monitor, and record any movement of people, vehicles, or animals on or off the farm. Permit only essential workers and vehicles to enter the farm. Avoid visiting other poultry farms or unnecessary travel off the farm. Disinfect equipment, vehicles, footwear, and other items in contact with flocks. Change clothes before entering poultry areas and before exiting the property. Keep flocks away from wild or migratory birds, especially waterfowl. Isolate any ill animals and contact your veterinarian immediately. The department encourages poultry owners to report unusual deaths in their flock, drop in egg production, or any sick domestic birds to West Virginia WVDA's Animal Health Division, and then there's a phone number for that. So yeah, and you can get more information about the virus from the U.S. Department of Agriculture's website.
All right, so let's talk about the one that you actually didn't bring up to the table and had to go find it.
Oh, you had to go find one. Oh, yes. So this is kind of our funny news. At the same time, it makes me want to scream. Not because it's a bad thing. It's totally a good thing. I just have a little problem with the reporting. So former Coca-Cola model celebrates 100th birthday. So a woman in Georgia whose long life has included working as a model for Coca-Cola in the 1940s will celebrate a milestone birthday this week. Historic Roswell Place, an assisted living and memory care facility, said they'll celebrate resident Patricia Jandal's 100th birthday with cake and entertainment on Thursday, January 30th. Born in River Forest, Illinois, Jandal has led a life filled with style, grace, and creativity, the facility said. In the 1940s, Jandal worked as a stylist and model at the famed Chicago advertising agency Kling Studio, located in the same space that later housed Oprah Winfrey's Harpo Studios, where she posed as a model in advertisements for the Atlanta-based Coca-Cola Company and the Tucker automobile. Pat has always embraced an active and fulfilling lifestyle, Historic Roswell Place said. She was an avid golfer, enjoyed playing bingo, loved horse races and music, and was passionate about painting. Her creativity also extended to writing. She took writing classes for 10 years. Jandal was married to her husband, Walfred, for 44 years before his passing. They built a loving family that includes 5 children, 8 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. When asked about her secret to longevity, Jandal shared that it's simply a happy home life, Historic Roswell Place said. Reflecting on her remarkable 100 years, she named radios, telephones, cars, and TVs as the greatest technological advancements that have shaped her life, said the assisted living facility, where Jandal became a resident in December 2019. Miss Jandal is proof that style and grace only get better with time, Saren Connie, executive director of Historic Roswell Place, said in a statement. We're beyond excited to celebrate this milestone with her and hope the community will join us in honoring a century of her fabulous journey. Don't get me wrong, I think it's amazing. Congrats to her. She is 100, and that is awesome. What kills me is this is one of the 1940s Coca-Cola girls, aka Cola girls from the 40s. This is the face, or one of the many faces of Coca-Cola, who was going up against the likes of Lucille Ball and Joan Crawford. Like process that for a minute, that someone at Kling Studios was sitting here going, we need to sell more, because in the 40s were an especially prolific era in advertising for Coca-Cola, RC, and Pepsi. Like they were producing so many ad campaigns. They were literally hiring multiple agencies to internally compete against each other, as well as externally place those ads. Do you understand, like, the difficulty of being one of the faces that's expected to eke out just a little more market share than Joan Crawford and Lucille Ball?
Mm-hmm.
Like, head to head with Hollywood titans.
Right.
Like, I just can't imagine.
Mm-hmm. And what gets me is they don't even ask her about this.
No, they like, and I think a lot of it is just like, oh, she was a Coca-Cola model. Really doesn't understand the time period
or the in-depthness of an article.
Yeah, well, yeah, it kind of leaves a lot. Like, I don't know how much of this is because if you paid attention while I was reading, a lot of this is written past tense. She was an avid golfer. She enjoyed playing bingo, loved horse races. I'll go out on a limb and say she's in a memory care unit. I think she's probably struggling with dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot has changed for her.
Right, but at the same time, I'm quite sure they could have asked the question and gotten an answer. Sorry, there are some things you can't erase, that Alzheimer's cannot erase. You could have asked your grandmother the cooking temperature for tater tots, and she probably could have quoted it in her last days.
Probably. But no, I think sometimes there's lack of contextual understanding.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, an article like this doesn't really do justice. Like, she was a stylist and a model.
Right.
She wasn't just a stylist and a model.
Right.
Like, she went up against some of the biggest Hollywood, like, royalty at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Or soon to be royalty at the peaks of their careers.
Right.
When they're hawking everything from Maybelline to beer to, like, because don't forget, Joan Crawford was also Miss Rheingold.
Right.
For Rheingold beer, which I think is now a defunct company.
Right.
Don't quote me on that. I don't know my beers all that well. But I mean, just like, oh my God. That was an intensely competitive market space.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, you just kind of rattle off what she did and then just go, hi. We're like, she turned 100. Thanks. Enjoy this, nice little feel-good piece about 100 euro, or, a centenarian. Right. And just happy home life.
Mm-hmm.
Like, holy crap.
Right.
Like, talk about throwing out the baby with the bathwater, people.
Right.
Like the people that she went up against in advertising are now long since dead. Right. Like, we lost Lucille Ball in the 80s. Joan Crawford, also the 80s, I believe.
Right.
I mean, that's basically my lifetime.
Right.
They've been dead.
Right.
They would be a little bit older than her.
Right.
But this is the kind of, like, thing where that like, you really have to contextualize and put into place.
Right.
That, like, she wasn't just some model.
No.
Like, I think that's...
She was going up against superstars that had more than just modeling behind them. And another story that apparently lighted your fire right before the show. Let's go for it.
Oh, God. We've got another one.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. This one ticked me off.
Uh-huh.
So West Virginia, according to what is this? WVNS, So local news: is West Virginia the next retirement destination? States, experts, and locals react. So according to a recent study done by Bankrate, West Virginia might be the next best state to retire to. I'm going to reserve comments till the end. In their study ranking the best states to retire to in 2024, West Virginia ranked as the second best state, only behind Delaware. To get a more in-depth look, 59 News spoke with Dr. Joshua Price, an associate professor of economics with WVU Tech. He said an influx of people retiring to the mountain state boils down to two main factors. The first is West Virginia has got a low cost of living. The other incentive that I see is tax incentives. In his research, he found that West Virginia's cost of living was 16% below the national average. Dr. Price also points to the cost of inflation being a big talking point. The recent levels of inflation, it's brought prices and budgeting to everyone's mind. Retirees really have to consider that more than anybody else. So what does this hypothetical surge of retirees to the state look like? Dr. Price points out that it would bring a new kind of economic activity to the state. This could potentially include more spending on housing, services, and healthcare. The surge also looks to bring in a mix of people from across the country. This is according to a worker at the Raleigh County Commission on Aging. The majority have been from West Virginia. Every now and then, we get a few people from out of state. We get some people who have returned back home. Some people have moved away, and they came back to retire. So I see a few of those. While challenges to bringing in more elderly folks could exist, Dr. Price points out more opportunities for improvement will align, including healthcare.
All right, let's stop there.
You want to stop there? Okay, because I'm... One, talk about not knowing that we've spent like 30 plus years, almost 40, trying to make this a retirement state. Because back in the 80s, we decided that the whole economy, was going to be coal, tourism, and retirees. All right, so we're achieving that. We're now number 2 for the best states to retire to. When we decided to do this, we have drastically fallen short of even being able to provide and care for the retirees that are native to the state. Like, let that sink in. We're failing. Okay. We have lovely opportunities if you want to retire here. And as I pointed out in a comment, but I suggest you have a quick exit strategy for when the light of your golden years starts to dim. Because if you plan to go into long-term care facilities, hospice, or to otherwise decline and die in the state of West Virginia, I'll tell you now, it's going to be a nightmare. And that's if you just already live here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it angers me. It angers me. Mm-hmm. Because I like, long-term care facilities in West Virginia are basically operating like drug treatment facilities in that you don't really choose them. You take first bed available and you hope to God your loved one doesn't get kicked out. Too demanding, too needy, to whatever. That their care needs don't exceed staff capacity, that there isn't someone willing to pay more in cash versus insurance. Because you'll very quickly find yourself being told to find somewhere else to put them. And then we have the staffing shortages that lead to a lot of negligent care. Let's call it that. in which the level of staffing for the number of patients and the level of care required is woefully inadequate. Mostly because the majority of care facilities in the state are for-profit, and they are mostly run by private equity firms that have basically bought out a crap ton of care facilities, and they're literally trying to squeeze as much profit out of them as humanly possible. So this is old people's storage. Not that this is uncommon across the United States, just FYI. Stonerise is known as a particularly facility. And they operate all through the United States. Like, they have facilities all over the place. They are a large investment group that bought up, rebranded, and have a collection of facilities. And have hit some major headlines because of it. Just saying, search Stonerise, news articles, you'll in many cases be horrified. But that's just part of the problem. Then you have like long-term solutions in home, in which literally start early. Please start early. Don't wait until this has already gotten to a point that you critically need help now as a caregiver. Start early. There's a waiting list for services. It is very, very long. And more than likely, unless you are severely destitute, as in your loved one has almost zero income and assets, or the care needs are so complex and great, they're most likely going to die before they receive any support services.
Right.
We have a need that is this big. We have available funds and resources for about this much.
Right.
Like, that's where we are. And then hospice services are amazing or horrifying. There's really not a lot of in between.
Right.
Like, it's for like Hospice Compasses, I will say personally, wonderful group. They have done wonderful work. There's another one, not so great.
Mm-hmm.
Like, my personal experience with them was
horrifying.
Ultimately horrifying, yeah. It was inconvenient to them that it was holiday weekend. It was an inconvenience that she was not actively dying, so I really didn't need, any support services. And then when she was actively dying, no one was there because it was another holiday weekend, and they had a lot of people actively dying. So as long as you don't choose to die on a holiday or near, in like busy holiday season. Right. This was September, by the way. There was a lunar eclipse and Labor Day, Memorial Day, whatever it is.
Yeah, Labor Day. Yeah. But and then Hospice of Southern West Virginia, fucking all stars. You couldn't have asked for better. Mm-hmm. Like, some of the things you were telling me, I'm like, what? They didn't show you how to roll her?
No. Well, they did, but that was the part you corrected, is you're going to hurt yourself. Because I was explaining that they had me, and I know this is kind of one of those, no one wants to think about this, no one wants to talk about this. If you choose to walk away from the video right here, I understand. There's two different ways to roll a patient. One is to lift and push away. One is to lift and pull towards. I was shown lift and push away. which is a technically accurate, in the manual way to roll a patient.
Yeah, if you want them out of the bed.
Well, and this is where you pointed out from experience that works. It's exceptionally hard on your wrists. It's high risk for the patient. You are effectively, in pushing them away from you, having to rely heavily on the bed rail, and hoping you don't slam them into it.
Right.
So it's high risk for the patient, high risk for the caregiver, and overall it's in the manual for how you should do it. It's not an actual decent practice because it's wrought with bad outcomes.
Well, not to make light of it, but tell me you haven't done bedside care without telling me you haven't done bedside care.
Ultimately, that you've been trained. You are a certified professional. You don't have practical experience. Like that's what it came down to. And like, I know that's a super specific example, but it kind of, without getting too grotesque, pretty much highlights what the experience was like. It was which was mostly like, they were very nice while I was filling out paperwork, super supportive, on the spot, ready and willing with a pen for me to fill out all, and another family member, to fill out all the paperwork to get her into hospice, which, by the way, if you don't know, I think people get mortgages and sign their name less. Like, I want to be abundantly clear. It is a lot of paperwork. That intake process takes forever. Like, I've bought a car with less paperwork. Like, I truly and sincerely mean that. It took less paperwork to buy a car. Now, granted, I wasn't financing it, but still, it was less paperwork.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It was ridiculous. It is ridiculous. The process of medical care is ridiculous. The level of paperwork is ridiculous. And the poor training that is not and
again, it's something you have to take with availability. And do not get me wrong, there are amazing hospice services in West Virginia that, because I've done this process technically 3 times, but twice directly. Once with my father, once with my grandmother. The services my father got they were falling all over themselves.
Right.
They could not help us enough.
Right.
And even to a point we felt guilty. Like, I can't believe. Like, it was overwhelming in a good way.
Right.
And then there are services that are literally just bilking insurance for every dime they can squeeze out, running a minimal staff, and good luck.
Right.
You're on your own. I've never felt so alone in my life. In terms of medical support, because part of the hospice process is you are relinquishing the patient from their normal medical care.
Right.
So you're their GP, their cardiologist, their whatever. You're done with that. They can't help you anymore. They are a hospice patient.
Right.
Everything goes through hospice for their care, which is limited to comfort.
Right.
It was a nightmare. It was a 2-week nightmare.
And
again, I'm trying not to be grotesque. There's a lot of things I could say. I'm really trying not to be grotesque about it because it was a nightmare.
Well, I'm hoping, I'll put it to you this way. I'm hoping elderly who read these reports do not listen to these reports. The weather is cold, arthritis is high, medical care is shit.
Access. Let's not even talk about the fact that West Virginia can barely keep a road open.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? As in a fully functional road. Meaning it does all the things roads are supposed to do. We struggle with that in major cities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Like Charleston, for instance.
Right.
With this low cost of living comes the realities. You can have a very low quality of life, depending upon where you choose to locate.
Right.
And some of the things that you're going to need as you age are not going to be able to get to you at all.
Right.
Or when they can get to you, they will get to you.
Right.
There's and most of your major medical care is going to require the words life flight.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what those words mean yet, that's when they put you on a helicopter, and for about $110,000 and growing, they transfer you to a facility that actually has the resources for your care. Right. Usually somewhere around like Roanoke, Virginia.
Cleveland.
Yeah. Major medical facilities, because we don't technically have one.
Exactly.
The best we got is WVU Ruby.
Exactly. And, you know, they're doing the best they can, being basically the only fucking hospital in the state.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So let's move on over to, are you an asshole?
All right. I already feel like one after that segment.
No, you're not. You're speaking truth.
I do what I can. Am I the asshole for telling my cousin that his emotional needs aren't my problem and to get a job? My 23 male cousin, 30 male, and his girlfriend, 32 female, recently had to move out of their place after his girlfriend lost her job. My cousin has been unemployed for quite some time due to his mental health, which is a sore subject for him. This will be relevant later. His girlfriend has been job searching, but it's a long process and they need somewhere to stay in the meantime. So they've been staying with me and my roommate, 22 male. I didn't love this arrangement in the first place since we have a 2-bedroom apartment and I've needed to move into my roommate's room to make space. But it's family and my roommate says he doesn't mind having me in his room for now. Plus my aunt is paying us, so whatever. My problem is that my cousin and his girlfriend have insisted on bringing their emotional support dog with them, not a service dog. It's technically fine in terms of our lease, and I don't mind dogs in general, so at first I said okay. But this thing has been a nightmare. It's loud, pees on our floors, and it chewed up one of our couch pillows. My cousin and his girlfriend think this behavior is hysterical and endearing, but every time my roommate and I tried to bring up that we'd rather they find somewhere else for their dog, they go on and on about how they can't possibly part with their fur baby and just will not hear it. This all kind of culminated last night because my roommate had an important presentation this morning, so he tried to go to bed early last night, but the dog would not stop barking. My cousin and his girlfriend were all like, "Aw, she wants to play." But my roommate and I were pretty annoyed. I told my cousin that this arrangement was not working and that he needed to find somewhere else to put the dog. He told me again that it's their fur baby, and his girlfriend started getting really upset and telling me we were making the dog feel unwelcome, and it was like asking them to part with their child. I told them that the dog is not a baby and that they need to take responsibility for it or find somewhere else for the three of them to stay. He reminded me that he needs the dog for emotional support and that his girlfriend is trying to find a job and they have nowhere to go until then. Partially out of anger, I told him that his emotional support needs weren't my problem and that maybe he should try getting a job too. I know he's had a rough time with his mental health and how that impacts employment. So I think those two statements put together cut a little deeper than I intended. And he hasn't been talking to me today. And his girlfriend called me an ableist for what I said. My aunt texted me this morning that my cousin and his girlfriend plan on moving out this weekend with their dog and that I was way too harsh with them. I do understand why the comment had that effect on them, and I feel bad for that. But it finally got the dog out of our place after we've been trying the gentler approach, so I don't really know what else I could have done. Am I the asshole?
No. Like, that's not a support dog. That's a holy terror.
Well, here's the thing, and I'm going to say this, and I know there's an ableish tone to it, at least.
Mm-hmm.
Emotional support animals are not service animals.
Mm-hmm.
When I say that, I mean very specifically that I understand that the dog helps you. I don't think anyone has a belief that you're not being helped in some way by the animal.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is this is so much more akin to a pet than a service animal can ever be.
Right.
Depending upon how much you have worked with this animal, how much you have trained this animal, how much you are willing to be responsible for the animal's behavior. Right. It's not that people don't appreciate that it provides you emotional support and comfort. It's that the rest of the world ends up stuck in a place with this animal.
Right.
With varying results. There are many great and wonderful emotional support animals that are very well trained, responsible, like well behaved is what I'm trying to get at, that do not create an issue for others. And that would be, if that's what we were talking about and that's what it meant, everyone's totally cool with your emotional support animal. What no one's cool with is having their space destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
Dealing with never-ending barking
mm-hmm.
that serves no other purpose than barking.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's not an alert of a problem. It's just a barking dog.
Right.
Like when a service animal that alerts because of a seizure or low blood glucose or a gluten sensitivity or whatever, when that animal communicates, that is an alert of a problem.
Right.
Hi, you're in danger.
Right.
Not just a continuous monotonous sound because behavior has not been trained. Right. And again, if we were talking about a service animal alerting, no one has a problem with that. I'm cool with that. Like bark bloody murder, dog. Bark bloody murder. Because if someone's going to die because they don't receive medical treatment, that's a barking reason.
Right.
But uncontrolled barking, uncontrolled behavior, I don't see how people think that their mental condition, their need for emotional support, entitles them to destroy space and experience and quality of life for other people.
Right.
So I have to say, not the asshole your cousin is.
Right.
And I feel like I have to be very, very careful wording that, because I don't want to just blow up and be like, emotional support animals aren't real. Not what I'm saying. I think they're very real, and I think that's possible of any animal.
Right.
But ultimately, if you're going to be in the situation where you need an emotional support animal, you're also going to have to take the effort, time, and resources to make this an animal that can be in, public situations, that can be in shared living spaces, that can reasonably share space with the rest of the world without causing damage. Like, you can't make everyone else's life shitty because your mental health sucks.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, it sounds horrible, but it is the unfortunate reality.
Right.
Yeah, and our okay.
Okay.
We've got a comment. Oh, okay. So Brenda points out there are trained emotional support dogs. I have met them. Owner and dog got the training. This does not sound like a trained an official one. And this was a very well-behaved dog and focused on watching its owner's reactions in public.
Right.
Yeah. And again, everyone would be so welcoming of a well-trained, socially well-behaved emotional support animal. Like,
one of my best
mad because your really good dog is in Walmart. No one's getting mad about that. What people get mad about is your barking, shitting, trying to bite people dog is in Walmart. No one's getting mad about your quiet, almost forget that they're there, emotional support dog is going to be living in their apartment. It's the behavior and the actions that you're not doing anything about that are the problem.
Yes.
Like, they don't care you need an emotional support animal. That part's fine. The behavior of that emotional support animal is the problem.
Right. I don't know. Again, I don't think this is an extra support dog. I'm not sure what the animal that my student had in class was trained for. But I'm sorry, he was a better student than most of my students.
I think that actually was that was literally a service dog. And I forget what the function was. But yes, absolutely, you could almost. Oh, sorry.
That was literally a service dog, and
sorry, I set off Siri. So anyway, no, there was an actual trained service dog, actual service animal,
right?
Not just an emotional support animal, but a trained service animal that you could almost forget was there.
Right.
I will say that sometimes that would be a little hard. Right. And I've noticed this with some emotional support animals. They can be too adorable. Like, it's the weirdest phenomenon. Like, and for anyone who's not gone through the experience of, say, a seeing eye dog, for example, there is a bond between the owner of this animal and the animal that you cannot interfere with while they are working. They know when they're working because they're wearing their vest. They are at work. You can't treat this like any other doggy and pet them, play with them. Technically, for like seeing eye dogs, you're really not even supposed to acknowledge them.
Right.
Like, this is like trying to acknowledge a glucose meter, okay? Is how you're supposed to interact. These are some of the most insanely adorable animals at times. And you have to pretend to not notice. Or you have to communicate things like, in the instance of one friend, saying to them, your seeing eye dog is licking me, because that's not an appropriate behavior while they're working.
Right.
And the dog's just being cute and affectionate and friendly and everything else. But that's something that has to be stopped, and you have to communicate it that, like, dog's not working.
Right.
And they're being cute and adorable. And you have to not notice it. Just ignore it. Don't see it. Because there's this weird thing in which, because there are like at-rest moments, like especially with a seeing eye dog, once you're setting and not moving, they're not technically working at that point. They are resting between work phases. You're still supposed to treat them because they're in the vest, like they're working. But I think sometimes because the dog goes unacknowledged while they're working,
right?
I think it's like they feel like they can't be seen,
right?
And they don't know how adorable they're being,
right?
Like, stop it.
Exactly. All right, so the poll is up. Go ahead, make your judgment call. We'll see if we can give Joe an asshole trophy this week.
All right.
All right. So from Ask Gay Bros, this one's fun.
Okay. So mono to consensual non-monogamy? / open question. The husband and I have been talking about educating ourselves on opening up our relationship for the past year or so. My question for those who started in mono and moved to open, C&M, poly-esque, did y'all inform your friends about it? My husband suggested that we send a text to several of our friends letting them know. To me, that sounds weird, as I think it's just something I would bring up were it necessary, or if a conversation led that way, provided appropriate opportunity. He essentially wants to say something like, hey, starting tomorrow, you might see an Weldsy, the user's screen name, on the apps. We are starting to practice consensual non-monogamy, not stinking around. LOL. Nothing is wrong, just trying something new. Really, I'm just curious what others have done and why.
Nothing.
I'll say that's probably with the assumption that every relationship is monogamous. Therein lies a problem in which when we encounter any form of non-monogamy, we assume it's unethical, non-consensual. That it's cheating, that it's sneaking around, that it's hurting your partner, it's doing these things. And so it can be and I think everyone's looking for a solution. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want to assume, oh, well, I saw your husband on the apps, y'all must be open now. Only to find out later they were cheating for months or years or whatever. And then you're the bad friend who knew all along, but said nothing. Nor does anyone want to have the conversation because it's awkward. Of, oh my God, I saw your husband on the apps. I think he's cheating on you. No, we're open. Thank you for your concern. Because it goes awkwardly. I think everyone's looking and hoping or trying to find or trying to work out a way to signal, hey, what I'm doing is fine. All of this gets complicated because there are people who cheat and claim they're ethically non-monogamous, their relationship is open, their partner knows, it's, only to find out later, oh, that was such a line of crap.
Right.
Because people who are being unethical are not stopping at cheating. They're then co-opting ethical monogamy or ethical non-monogamy as license to do it. So that it makes ethical non-monogamy look bad.
Right.
It's a really, I don't know that mass alerting your friends is quite the right answer, but I think part of me also likes it a little bit more than dealing with the case by case, one at a time, over time. Do you know your husband's cheating? Do you know your husband's cheating? I saw your husband on the apps. I think he's cheating. Like, I think that starting from a mindset that you think someone's spouse is cheating is probably the worst introductory to an open or, ethical, consensual non-monogamy for just really understanding what it is.
Right.
I will agree to that I think the case by case, I'm finding out because I thought your spouse was cheating on you,
right,
is probably the worst way to introduce someone to your non-monogamous relationship.
Right. But, some of the messages we've gotten before, and it's just like, are you nuts? He's not. Like, did you miss the memo?
Oh, in what sense? Which ones are we talking about? Because, okay, like, we put on profiles like this is an open relationship. Unfortunately, because that's been done by people who are unethically non-monogamous, that kicks off did you know that your spouse has a profile that says that y'all are in an open relationship? And it's like, like, yeah, that's what this is. But now you're dealing or facing the fact that someone started with thinking that one of y'all is a cheater.
Right.
And that's a horrible introduction to, no, we're not. Right. I almost want to, like, kind of get behind OP's spouse who's like, let's just go ahead and tell everyone.
Right.
Just, hi, this is what we're doing. If you see them, or if you see it, it is what it is.
Right. See, I don't know. I've kind of had fun with it when I get reports back, and it's like, really? That's interesting.
Okay.
Did you get video? I've made these comments to these little nosy people. Techie was blah, 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 blah.
Meanwhile, it goes the other direction with me, is that I almost never. Like, and here's the reality there, and what you have to contend with when it's is ethical, but it's not public per se. Like, you don't take out a billboard, you don't mass email, you don't whatever. Right. I have to contend with the reality that there are people that we know that are okay with you cheating on me.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like process that with me. Is that there are people that are like, no, that's cool.
Right.
And it's like, well, wait a minute. This is like other side of the looking glass. Excuse me. Why do you report me, but you don't report him to me? Like, wait a damn minute here.
Well, like, have you checked with the others?
Like, chain or pearls, which one would y'all like me to hang from the hump on my back? Make a decision.
No. Like, have you checked with the other two? Because one of them tends to be the one that gets all the messages. Like,
the messages I get is basically, like your service agency that books your appointment. Again, not really the most flattering of things there. Like, excuse me. No, that is not how this works. Like, that is not how an open or ethically non-monogamous relationship works. I'm not scheduling him.
Right.
Like, that's not, no, you don't contact me to book an appointment for that. Right. You also don't call me to book an appointment with him, period. But that's a whole other story.
Right.
But not for that either. Like, like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I appreciate that you find me approachable and that you believe him explicitly. I can be okay with that, but don't like call me to book him.
Yeah.
Oh, so Brenda says, no, Joe, we all know he'd tell on himself and you'd already know. It's less that he tells on himself, he brags. He'd come in and tell you about his wonderful place or the sweetest gift that he was given. You'd already know.
Uh-huh.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And right. Okay, I will accept that from now on. Is knowing his personality, there's no way I couldn't know, because there's no way he wouldn't be like, guess where I went to dinner.
Uh-huh.
And then it's like, really? How did you get there? Like,
Please, you know about it beforehand. Like, you get informed faster than my Google Calendar gets filled in.
No, honestly, though, and I said all of that more jokingly, right. Because I know the realities of me is that it's kind of hard to imagine me getting upset about that. Like, if you talk to me for any length of time,
right?
Not to mention my repetitive pleas to take my husband, please. There's a 48-hour minimum. Scratches and dents are allowed. You will return him. We know this.
Uh-huh.
Just say it.
Mm-hmm.
In case you want to know what my policy is on
right.
him going out with others.
Yeah. But, no, it's always interesting when they come telling me, and I'm like, and did you see him with a doggy bag?
This is talking about going on a date, guys, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Like, was there pie? Was there dessert? Do I have dessert? These are the important parts.
Right.
Now Brenda says about my personality. Now, you wouldn't brag until he brought up the place weeks later, and you'd be like, "Oh yeah, that place is really nice."
Mm-hmm.
I'm not like I really, and I think it's accurate to say I'm not really big on the kiss and tell. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but like if I were to go, ooh, I want to try this out, you'd be like, no, they have shared plates there. And it's like, oh, I know what you mean by shared plates.
Yeah, there's a certain type of restaurant he doesn't like.
Yeah.
At all.
Right.
And this whole, he really likes places where you order your own food.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe share an appetizer, not places where you order for the table and everyone gets handed plates to share everything equally, and that's the expectation.
With no utensils.
Yeah, y'all saw the shiver of horror. Just no.
Like, with no utensils. Well, that's my biggest problem. With no utensils.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, Brenda's with you. She's like, I agree. Yeah. It's a different experience. I'm kind of cool with it. I do think the utensil thing was an issue. I think what killed that one particular restaurant for you was that coffee was not just something they had. It was a whole ordeal to try to get coffee.
Right. All right, let's check out the poll. Oh, you don't win a trophy this week.
Oh, I'm not the asshole. Darn.
You're not the asshole. Try again next week. All right, guys, we will see you on Tuesday with another interview, I think. Yes, I do have a lovely interview scheduled, and we'll be having fun with that. Until then, we do want to take a moment to thank our sponsors.
Absolutely. We do want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Brenda, Joan Owen, Shannon C, Shannon D, Lady Gwendolyn, Caitlin Bell, Devin, and Bella. If you'd like to learn more about us, the show, or how you too can become a Patreon supporter and receive all the wonderful benefits our baristas receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yes. All right, guys. We'll see you later. Bye, y'all.
Bye.